Daddy gets lost. Daddy gets lost. Daddy gets lost. Munch.
Hello and welcome to Daddy Eats Last, where we discuss the challenges of being a man in modern society. And God, there are a lot of them. And we also discuss whatever the hell that even means. I'm Kane, and joining me this evening is Matty. How you doing, Matty?
Not too bad, mate. Not too bad. Yourself?
Good. How's your weekend?
It was a bit hit and miss, or roller coaster this weekend. Saturday was really good. We did got a fair bit of stuff done. Managed to fix the car, which I'd been putting off for a while. Channeled my inner father there. He's a mechanic, so that was a high point of the weekend. A little win, and today was a bit rainy here, so everyone was sort of inside fighting with each other. It's just a classic family Sunday where not everything went correctly or right, I guess.
You Queenslanders, as soon as it rains, everything just gets thrown out of whack.
It all turns to shit. Yeah.
It certainly does. Now we have a very special guest tonight, Matty. It's your good friend Creesh.
Yeah, my good friend Brendan McCreesh. We've known each other for the best part of 25 years. We went to high school together, and we're best men at respective weddings. Been overseas together, so we've shared quite a lot together.
Well, I've met Creesh a number of times, usually out after many beers, and then him sleeping in my office with you on my floor back in the day when we were employed in the same venue. So we're really chuffed to have you on tonight, Creesh. So welcome to Daddy Eats Last.
Thanks very much, Jen. Good to be on.
Now, the reason we've had you on, and Matty and I have discussed this previously, is last year you went through quite a rough patch in your life, and you very generously offered to come on to Daddy Eats Last and tell your story on what happened. And I guess, tell us a little bit more about when you knew you needed to maybe get some help. And we're talking more around anxiety and things like that, aren't we? So I don't want to put words into your mouth. So I guess the first place where we would start is, when did you kind of notice that something maybe wasn't quite right?
Yeah, so it was probably an accumulative effect over a number of years. I've actually probably had two dips, most recently being last year, and previously it was probably a few years before that. So for way of background, I've been working as a digital forensics consultant for 10 years, and it's a bit of a high-stress job. It's not a 9-to-5 job. It's late nights, long hours, often working late at night so we can make sure that we can get stuff done in the morning instead of wasting time waiting for things to process through. Having said that, I love my job, and that's why I still enjoy working in it, and I haven't left and moved into a different industry. But our investigations are like puzzles, so I'm always thinking of ways to put the pieces together, and whether that's subconsciously or consciously when I'm walking around or playing with the kids, I'm always thinking about ways that I can come up with further results. So I guess our results can mean someone's convicted of an offence, or they could lose their job or their livelihood. So I'm always wary about the seriousness of our jobs and the way that they can end up with a certain result. So back in about 2017, I first started noticing when I was managing the business in my boss's absence, he had testicular cancer. It's pretty much a very similar process to Matt went through. And I didn't want to let him down. I wanted to prove that I could do it without him having to look over my shoulder and having to check in all the time. I just wanted to let him get through the process of recovery and not have to worry about what was going on in the office. I wanted to prove that I could do it. And the stress of managing the staff, as Kane, you know, and do my own work at the same time was just a bit overwhelming. And I just started to notice on the train rides to and from work, that used to be my alone time where I could kind of switch off, listen to a podcast like this one or watch some Netflix. But I'd start to get chest pains and I couldn't sleep, and I'd start to get panic attacks. Not even having panic attacks previously, I could notice that I couldn't breathe very well, and it was just like a wave of thoughts would just keep on coming and coming and coming. I just couldn't settle. I couldn't get that out of my head. So at that time, I took myself off to the doctor, and I got some medication for anxiety and actually got treated for stomach ulcers. But as soon as my boss came back and it was kind of resumed normal programming, it just tailed away and it became more normal for me. So I took myself off the medication, which is probably the worst thing that I could have done. And you hear that a lot of people say that are going through the same similar stuff. But last year was a little bit different. So it was similar in the sense that my boss took 4 weeks off. I was handed the reins to the business again. That's a similar trend, I guess. I was in control. But I was bringing that stress home, stopped exercising, and I was taking the stress out on the wife and the kids, just over little things that they might be doing around the house, and I'd lash out. The anxiety attacks started again. I was trying to juggle being a father, a husband, and work, and then little things just started triggering panic attacks, like worrying that my relationship was going to break down because I'm always working around the clock, not seeing her enough. The wife, seeing people on LinkedIn achieving things that I always wanted to do, and I just overanalyzed absolutely everything. So one day I dropped the girls off at Tinder because I was working at home that particular day, and both of them were upset because at that point I didn't really do the drop-offs that often. It was my wife that did them. It was a little bit different for them, and they got upset that I was leaving, and they were crying. And I got back to the car, and I just burst into tears. I remember saying out loud after about 10 minutes, just crying in the car, sobbing, like, what is wrong with me? I couldn't figure it out. So I worked from home that day, went back to work the next day into the office in the city. I came home, just a normal day, wasn't overly stressful, but the wife asked me how my day was. And again, I just couldn't answer her, burst into tears. And that's when she asked me what's wrong. I just pretty much said, look, everything's wrong. Like, I couldn't see any positives in life. And she said, look, you need to go see someone, and that brought me back to the doctor. So I guess that pretty much is a summary, a high level of the two phases that I went through.
Yeah. Now, what does a panic attack feel like? Like, because not having ever, I don't think I've ever had a panic attack, and I know people who have. Can you describe for the listeners what a panic attack feels like for the person having it?
Yeah, well, for me, I was a lot of heavy breathing. The heart pounding out of your chest, chest pains. I imagine that would feel much like a heart attack, not that I've had one, but very tight chest. And just, you can't control your thoughts. Like, it was just like, I kind of describe it as it's a tsunami of thoughts. So everything that you've been thinking about, that you're worrying about, it just comes at you, and you just cannot push it away. You can't fight it. And that's probably the best way that I can describe it. And you try and talk yourself out of it like you would in any other kind of situation, but you just can't. It's just this kind of self-fulfilling problem. We keep on thinking about it and thinking about it.
And how long does that, like, an episode like that last for? Like you mentioned before, like it was 10 minutes in the car. Can they go for, I don't know, how long have they gone for, the ones you've experienced?
Not that long. Probably you kind of feel it building until it reaches a kind of a high point, and then it'll tail off. But for me, I don't know, for some reason it happened on the train. Something as simple as a client calling on the mobile, and I feel like that's my time, that would just tip me over the edge. You know, what are they calling about? What's wrong? I need to call them back. It's going to be another issue. I have to work all night. You know, you have my things planned. But yeah, typically it could last, 10, 15 minutes or so until you kind of settle yourself back down again. But again, you're just bringing it down to a level that's manageable instead of it being that really in your face kind of feeling.
Yeah, so that it doesn't really, I say, like, the thoughts don't go away, but you manage to bring yourself, bring your anxiety level down enough that it's manageable. Is that fair?
Yeah, you calm yourself down. That's for me anyway. I'm sure everyone's different.
Yeah, it's just good for people to understand what it feels like for you, because that sounds pretty consistent with a couple of other people I've known who've had panic attacks. And I've had somebody have a panic attack in my office back when, back in the same office that you and Matty used to sleep in on a Friday night. So,
sure.
Yeah, it was pretty consistent there. It was just, the almost, heart attack, chest pain and shortness of breath and inability to breathe, almost like hyperventilating through, different thoughts running through their head.
Yeah. And often my bosses said, "Are you all right? Because you're pale." So obviously the blood has smushed out of your face. But not that at that time I didn't disclose anything to him. He calls me now like the duck on water. So above water I look cool and calm, but my feet are kicking under the water.
Yeah.
That's what's all happening.
So at that point, you're not feeling okay. What's the process at that point? When did you know you needed to get help? Did somebody identify that for you? Did you self-identify? Who did you talk to?
Look, I probably knew that I had to get help, but I think it's just one of those things you guys have probably covered it off before. Being a man, you don't think that you've got an issue, you work it out, you fight through it. But when I was crying in the car, for no real good reason, but that must have just been the overwhelming, the little things that added up. There's the straw that broke the camel's back. So when I couldn't answer my wife and she asked me a simple question about how my day was, I knew then that I had to go get some help. And she encouraged me to book in immediately tomorrow and go see my GP that I've been seeing since I was a kid, and go on the journey as to what it's going to be at a mental health plan and whatnot.
At least you're honest. Like a lot of people, when how's your day? I was fine. Like even if it wasn't, a lot of people, it was fine. It was just another day. And we've all been guilty of that when we've had a shit day. Like that's more than a shit day. But the fact that you were honest and then your wife could point and support you in the right direction of help, I think is really important as well. To have the right people around you to ask those questions when they know something's not up.
Yeah, there's only so many. I think there's only so long you can go on without coming out with it, because she could see every day on my face and my behaviour that something was up. It might not have been something on the day, but it's just been I'm carrying around baggage with me. So she knew she can read me pretty well, so she knew something was up. But the week before, actually, that I broke down in tears after dropping the kids off, I went to a lunch where Danny Foley was speaking, and he was presenting on his battles, and he spoke about how he took himself off his medication because he thought he was fine. And it was shortly after that where the news came through that he'd passed away. I was like, wow, and that really blew my mind. And that took quite a toll on me. Like I was quite emotional about that, because I thought, wow, he's a guy that has, he's been quite public about his problems. He's open about it and the way that he's dealing with it. But even still, he's still succumbed to mental illness, unfortunately. Yes, I was quite sad to hear. But going through that whole process, I can understand why and how suicide happens, especially with males. Not that I ever contemplated doing it, but when you're going through those emotions, and as I mentioned, that tsunami of feelings, sometimes it's just hard to see a way forward. And that night where I burst into tears with my wife, I could not see myself 3 months, 6 months down the track. I could barely see myself the next day. And that was really worrying. It was really scary. And it's not until you have people around you that say, hey, stop thinking about that. Think about now. Think what you've got now. Live in the now. It's quite eye-opening, but you need that clarity, someone to tell you that there's nothing really wrong.
Yeah, I just just talking about people like people, close friends, and your wife and stuff supporting you. Matty, did you ever have any inkling at all that Creesh was going through a tough spot? Like, did you ask? Did Creesh open up to you? Like, has it come to light after sort of all the couple of episodes?
Good question. Creesh was quite open with the issues he was having around work in those previous 2 episodes before. We mentioned the car breakdown, but after the car breakdown, he did send a text to myself and another close friend of both of ours. But in the lead up to that, I knew there was some problems going on with work and such, but not to the extent that it was taking its toll on how it did on him. So, living up here, we'd have sort of monthly conversations, I guess, catch up calls about it, and I'd figure it out through that, but definitely not to the extent it was. So I'm so glad that he did come forward and tell both myself and our other guy as well, just so we could try and understand, what he was going through.
Yeah. When to paint the picture, Creesh, you're just a normal. I say a normal guy. Everyone's a normal guy, but I've been out with you on Friday nights, like going back sort of 10 years ago with Matty, and we used to have a great time. Like you life the party, like coming out on a Friday night, we'd just be out to whatever time, having fun and stuff like that. So it's not there's no sort of. When I think back, I go, I would never have thought you would have gone through issues like this, and but it just strikes you that everyone can be affected by these sort of things, and it's important to try to read those signs like your wife did.
Yeah, and it is hard. Like you're right. If you're a person that likes to be crack jokes all the time, you'll probably still keep doing that. But it's just in your subconscious what's going on in the background that's weighing you down. And it's not until there's a day where you might come into work or your friends will notice that you're not joking around, and that's the easiest thing to do. Like, oh, what's up with you? Nothing, I'm just having a bad day. But no one's going to really say that.
No, exactly right. So once you went and got, well, I say when you've got help, when you've gone to see a doctor, what does that look like? What does a plan look like, and what does the initial, I guess, interview or process look like to actually go about getting help?
Yeah, so I booked into my GP and told her exactly what I was going through, and she immediately said, "Oh, you were on anxiety medication a couple of years ago, and then you never came back to see me to refill the script." I said, "Yeah." She wasn't telling me off, but she was just saying it with her eyes, kind of smile. And I said, "Yeah, look, I felt fine," which I was. I felt fine, and there wasn't an issue, for a couple of years later. But so what she did is she wanted to put me on a mental health plan. So what I had to do was fill out a whole bunch of paperwork and answer a bunch of questions in a bit of a matrix. And, how do you feel? Have you ever considered suicide? A whole bunch of questions. I think it was like between 1 to 10. And then at the end of that process, you add up your score. And I fell into the category of having mild depression and mild anxiety. So you can have severe and low. So from that point, she referred me to a couple of psychologists that I could see as part of a mental health plan. I think you get something like 10 sessions in a calendar year, I think, or it might be 12-month block. So she allowed me to research those psychologists online and see if there was a particular one that I was keen on having a look at. And I also got prescribed the same medication that I was on. It's called Lovan. Having said that, I'm only on the introductory dose of that particular drug. The plan was to get me onto it, so it builds up in your system, and then bring me up to a point where she says, how do you feel, and just monitor me. But just having the introductory dose has been fine. Like, it's just taken the edge off, and the best way to describe it is kind of bringing everything down a level or two. So the things that really did worry you at particular times is not so much of a worry anymore. So that's been quite good. So I didn't think that the medication would have been good with the different sort of side effects and stuff, but that's been good. So far, so good. And the particular psychologist, I booked in, I think I did about three or four sessions, and then I can't remember the name of the process that he wanted to use to try and help me. He was talking about, think about all the different things that cause you anxiety in your life, and then he gets you to do like a maths equation or something, and subconsciously those thoughts are processed, and somehow that's meant to kind of process through your brain, and it's not such an issue anymore. I didn't really click with that psychologist very well. He's a young guy, and I thought that I would have, but he wanted me to come in 4 or 5 days in a row and knock it over, and it's for an hour or two each time, and I couldn't do it, just practically work-wise and with the kids. So I was going to swap psychologists, but I never got around to it. So in terms of advice, probably don't do what I've done in terms of seeing the psych and then dropping it. But again, I'm fine. I see my GP regularly, and dose is fine for medication. I'm going along quite well.
Okay, so I was going to say almost a maths base, like, almost like coming in to do homework for an hour or 2 hours just to like work out that equation to drop it down a notch.
Yeah, it's quite strange. I did look it up when he told me it, and it's something to do about the frequency, the way that the brain works out. If certain things in your life have caused you stress or high anxiety, it keeps those memories in your brain for the next time that you come up to something that's going to bring those memories back, like a different situation. It brings those memories back and says, hey, this caused you a bit of anxiety or stress last time. You shouldn't probably do that. But this allows you to process it. So it's something to do about when you dream. Your dream works when you're dreaming, your body and your brain works at a certain frequency. It processes your memories of the day and stuff through.
Oh, wow.
Anyway, it's meant to work, but I didn't go near it.
Now, does anyone in your family have any family history of anything like this that you're aware of? Because I know I don't know any of my family history with regards to medical issues outside of some heart disease, but I know, like, I've been, my mum's mentioned something about my nana at some point. Is there any known I guess, anxiety or anything like that in your family tree?
Yeah, it's a good question. So there is, and I wasn't aware of it until I let my family know about it. My sister told me that I was a really anxious kid. I had no idea. That was just the way that I felt that every person was growing up. Just that I was really nervous about the littlest things in life. My uncle, who lived overseas, he committed suicide, mental health, and my brother also he's had anxiety issues for probably 15 years, and I had no idea until I told my parents, and then my parents have told other siblings, and then they've all given me a call saying, "Oh yeah, such and such is on this, and they've got the same problems." And brother called me up and he said, "Oh yeah, hey, I've been on a similar medication, but I'm on like triple or quadruple the dose." So it's interesting, yeah. So it definitely is in our family, which was, in a strange way, comforting to know that there are people to talk to if you need to.
Yeah, and I could imagine, like, understanding that, like, your brother's on the same drug, like, something like that would be it'd be reassuring, because obviously you thought on the whole he was doing pretty okay.
Yeah. See him probably every second Sunday or something at my parents' place, and he doesn't say anything. Life seems normal to him. Goes to work, comes home, he's got his own kids and wife, and you just don't know what people are going through unless they, it's that hollow kind of question that you see people most day. How are you going? Yeah, fine.
Do you think that might? Do you think you may not have known that because back when maybe it started first happening for him, it was not as, I guess, prevalent in society or in the community about how it is okay to come out and talk to people about that?
Yeah, possibly. But my older brother's a lot more probably private than I am. I don't mind sharing, clearly, different pieces of my personal life, whereas he's probably a bit more of a closed book. But I think it would have something to do with it. Yeah, you're right. Where mental health was probably a bit frowned upon, and it's a bit of an excuse back in the day. He's been going through it for a long time. And look, again, he seems fine. I'm not sure the ins and outs of his treatment and how often he checks in with psych and whatnot. But yeah, it is interesting to see that there are people going through certain things where on the outside it looks like they're just going along swimmingly.
Yeah, I think that's the hard bit with family not sharing, things which are obviously in the family, because I'd imagine there's some sort of connection, if it's hereditary is not the right word, but if there's linkages in the family where somebody else has been going through it, that you may be more susceptible to something like that. And I can, like Matty was saying, like, it was maybe a bit taboo, 5 or 10 years ago, where now it's a bit more in the open, but hopefully, going forward, everyone will be a lot more open about these sort of things. So people who, may be susceptible to these things via a family line know that, hey, shit, I better think about that, like, instead of just kind of brushing stuff off.
Yeah. So I think the case with my uncle, they were back in Ireland, and he was living with my grandma, his mother, and I can't remember if my grandma had died first and then he took his life after that. But that, from the outside, seemed to be the reason why. It was the grief of the loss of his mother. He was running the farm, but obviously there was other reasons. But at the time, I don't know whether my dad and his brothers knew what was going on, but it might have just been put down to the fact of grief and the loss of his mother. Whereas clearly there were other issues at play.
Yeah. Now, looking forward, or now looking forward, I say, what does inverted commas recovery look like? So you're a bit further down the track now after seeing the psychologist, going back onto the medication. What do you feel like? What do you feel like now? What does recovery look like, if recovery is the right word?
Yeah, I wonder if it is the right word. It's probably just a work in progress.
Yeah.
And just monitoring it. So I spoke to my boss, pretty much immediately after I had that breakdown and said, look, this is what's going on. Seeing help. And he opened up and said, yeah, he's been on stuff as well, and he's been seeing someone, and then he started rattling off names of competitors that we deal with and ex-colleagues that are all going through similar things. I don't know if it's something to do with my industry that might be the cause, but that was interesting to know as well, that unfortunately it might just be the consulting life. It's high stress. You guys have both been consultants as well. You know, it's like, but in terms of what it looks like, I'll probably continue to see the psychologist. I'll have to go back. I won't just brush it away completely. I will go back and do that. Medication, keeping on that and just monitoring how I feel honestly. If I do feel like it's getting me down, go back to the GP or the psych and say, look, I'm not coping with X, Y, Z. How do I manage that? Do I need to come in and do a different way of processing my feelings, or do I have to go on different medication or up it? And speaking to my boss was good, like trying to get some better work-life balance. So now I'll typically work 2 days a week from home. I guess COVID-19 has been a blessing in disguise in some sense for me personally, because I've been working from home 5 days a week. That has its positives and negatives, but largely it's been quite good. I know you guys have spoken about train travel to and from work in previous episodes, but it's an hour and 10 for me in and back each way. So cutting that out and just having breakfast with the kids and being able to drop them off and pick them up from school has been really great. In terms of recovery, probably exercise as well. I've made a point to do exercise most days. In the last couple of weeks, I've probably taken that off a bit, but it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's half an hour of exercise or the home workouts or going for a walk, just something. It's amazing the effect that exercise can have just on your mental health. Just getting out and doing something, fresh air, getting the blood pumping. I know when I mentioned it to Matt and our other friend, when I sent the message to them, telling them what was going on, they both asked me, is there any outlets that I've got that I can go and blow off some steam? But it comes back to probably free time. Like, I prefer to be at home with the kids and my wife rather than going out and playing mixed basketball or netball or something, or indoor football at night time. So I'll steer clear of that, but I probably should catch up with a mate or two and have a hit of golf or something on the weekend, just away from the kids and the hustle and bustle of life, and just talk some sport or something while whacking the golf ball around. So I think that sort of stuff, whether it's tennis or just doing something on the weekend, especially just to break it up before you head back to work for the week. So in terms of recovery, that'd probably be about it.
What do you, sorry, Matty, jump on.
Oh, I was just going to say, Brendan, when we as humans go through, a situation in life that potentially causes a lot of stress, we come out the other side and you're still in recovery mode or work in progress mode, I guess. It changes our way of thinking and our perceptions on certain things. I know for me, when I went through my testicular cancer and now the other side, you sort of, not to use profanity here, but you gave less of a fuck about things, I guess, just because of what you've been through.
Yeah.
What's it like for you in terms of the way you think about things now that you're on your medication? Are you still thinking in as high stressly as you were, or are you now sort of thinking, well, I could think about it like that, or I can approach it in this sort of way?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I probably, it's something that my wife has told me a number of times, especially the last few years. When I'd get home from work, I'd have dinner, sit on the couch, open up the laptop, start tapping away. She's like, what are you doing? Doing work. I'm trying to stop that, cut it out a lot. And she says, they're going to be there tomorrow. There's going to be work there tomorrow. If you do finish work off tonight, there's going to be more work tomorrow. So I probably got a lot better in not worrying about getting something done, pushing it, getting it done. Because in my job, even though there might be a deadline of 6 o'clock or something, you'll find that if you get it by the deadline, they don't even check it until the next day anyway. So I've been a lot more calmer in that sense. And especially the way I was emailing all the time during the evening, and they'd be emailing back. So this constant back and forth all night up until like 10 o'clock. So I just schedule emails, even if I do jump on the laptop briefly to write a few emails, I'll schedule them to go out in the outbox in the morning, and then it stops that flow coming back in, so I can just switch off for the rest of the evening. But yeah, I haven't probably had that awakening that you would have had with cancer. But I don't think I'm as bad as I was. And that's part of probably the recovery came is, don't take life too seriously. The job's a job. There's always going to be work there. Doesn't matter if you knock it off tonight, tomorrow, the next day. Someone's always going to be wanting something, so they can just wait. Family comes first.
And just on that, and maybe that's a really good jumping off point for tonight. What do your wife and kids think now? Like compared to you last year, what do they think of the 2020 Creesh versus 2019?
I think they would think that I'm a lot better than what I was. I know that my wife probably thinks that I slipped back into old habits. We should be watching something on Netflix and just say, "What are you doing?" I'm checking emails. Put your phone down. I guess that's a habit that's been built up over 10 years. I'm trying to get rid of it. I think that I'm getting better. Not sure about the kids. I think being at home a lot more now is great for them. Obviously, they're only young. It's just been great to spend more time with them at the moment. So I think that I'm a lot happier than I was. Absolutely.
That's awesome to hear, mate.
Cheers. Yeah.
Thank you very much for coming on Daddy Eats Last, Creesh. It's been great hearing your story, and we'll continue to check in to see how your the work in process goes. But mate, it's great to hear that you're doing much better.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Well, that wraps up for this week on Daddy Eats Last. Remember to subscribe to Daddy Eats Last on iTunes if you haven't done already. And while you're there, please leave a review. Also tell your mates about the podcast, especially if they are guys. And also ask them if they're doing okay. And if they say, "I'm fine," maybe ask them again in a different way. But most of all, thanks for listening. And we'll be back next week for another episode, or should I say serving, of Daddy Eats Last. How's that for a dad joke? Catch you next week.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.